Good morning. I would say ladies and gentlemen, but it's perhaps a bit formal. And I'll chairing this third session of our conference. We'll have three speakers and two commentators. Unfortunately, one of our speakers, Professor Veronica Rodriguez-Blanco, is ill and could not come from England. We are sorry for her absence, but it's cause majeure and it's a pity. We proceed in this order. There will be first intervention by Professor Rein. Then we'll have an intervention by Professor Pavlos Eleftheriadis. We'll have a break. We are deliberating now if we should have a break or not. We'll see how we are to guide whether the two papers are too engaging or less engaging. And according to the quality, let's say the weight, we will balance their weight together against the collective good of having a good break or not, or a good discussion or not. Perhaps we even apply the weight formula proposed by Professor Alexi for this difficult deliberation. In any case, first Rein, second Pavlos Eleftheriadis, perhaps after balancing a break or not, and then Professor Susi. After Professor Susi, there will be two commentators that will enrich our discussion, and then we could open the floor. I think we have more time since one speaker is missing, so there is more room for discussion. Discussion is always very, very important for a conference. And we still stick to this although liberalism in retreat, in this table here, we still stick to the old French motto, du choc des idées jaillit la lumière. And so that is from the opposition of ideas springs the light, which is a discursive principle, discursive idea. So it's the basic idea we have behind the discourse theory of argumentation and reason. All right, I've already talked too much, and I'm very proud and honored. It's a privilege to me and a great pleasure to give the floor to Professor Rein.
Thank you, Massimo. Now, I intend to make my presentation in two parts. First, if I may say so, philosophize a bit about universality of human rights, whether they are universal or natural, and then to speak about main contemporary challenges to human rights. Of course, these challenges differ as to other countries or regions, and there are some traditional challenges in many parts, hotspots in the world. But there are two current general trends, in my opinion, which have impact on many things in the world, including human rights, and not only in those traditional trouble spots, but also in the countries which have so far at least been in the forefront of human rights movements. About them in the second part of my presentation, but first a very short methodological comment. The dominant trend in Western social and political philosophy, in my opinion, from Kant with his categorical imperative to John Rawls with his veil of ignorance, and many other both in between and after them, has been what one may call abstract, in any negative sense necessarily, philosophizing or theorizing, That's to say, from some very general, intuitive premises and axioms towards more concrete ideas and policy recommendations. What such an approach, notwithstanding some great insights of many original thinkers, neglects is the historical and comparative analysis. Therefore, I am tempted to agree with Cambridge political philosopher Rein when he writes that, I quote, "Political philosophy must be realist. That means, roughly speaking, that it must start from and be concerned in the first instance, not how people ought to ideally or ought rationally act, what they ought to desire or value, the kind of people they ought to be, etc., but rather with the way social, economic, political, and other institutions actually operate in some concrete societies at some given time, and what really moves human beings to act in given circumstances." Whereas Francis Fukuyama, later not in his End of History, of course, wrote in his voluminous political history, theories ought to be inferred from facts and not the other way around. As most of these theories in political philosophy, including human rights theories, have been elaborated upon by Western thinkers, it is not at all surprising that practically all of them support or used to support some version of political arrangements based on Western liberal democratic values. Theoretical differences so far have been mainly differences within the same Western worldview. In a way, even the main 20th century ideological contradiction between liberal democracy and communist worldviews was an intra-Western ideological clash into which other peoples were dragged. Non-Western worldviews have been either ignored completely or they were treated with some condescension. For example, classical Chinese, Indian and Islamic thoughts were considered, if at all of course, as only historically relevant. In order to avoid such theorizing without studying concrete societies, which had previously existed or exist today, without the analysis of why some of them had become slave-owning societies and while others have evolved into liberal democracies, why somewhere there is an Idi Amin or Saddam Hussein or other notorious strongman in power, while in different other places democratically elected liberals fail to find solutions to today's challenges. It is necessary to take historical and comparative approaches to all these questions. I remember years ago already somewhere I wrote whether it was Iraq as it was because Saddam Hussein was as it was, or whether Saddam Hussein was as he was, because Iraq was as it was. And I believe this is well illustrates that leaders and societies deserve each other very often. As to my approach to the issue of universality of human rights, this is determined, though not exclusively, of course, by my personal experience of having worked within the UN and also representing this organization in societies that are quite different from societies where I have lived traditionally. Mostly I have worked also in Muslim countries. And this experience, among other things, has led me to the conclusion, or confirmed this conclusion, that human rights are not universal, or that at least not all human rights are universal. If we were to claim that they are universal, immutable, natural, and not dependent on time and space, we would come to a conclusion which, from my point of view, is quite absurd, that the behavior of, let's say, Yanomami Indians in the Amazonian rainforest should accord, if not to the European Convention on Human Rights, then at least to the Universal Declaration of 1948, or say, in Genghis Khan's empire, there would have been, of course, human rights, but neither the ruler itself nor his chapchiks knew nothing about them. And they were simply like laws of gravitation, waiting for Newton or Einstein of social sciences to discover these existing rights. Today, I would say some rights are universal. Some may be universal. Some may become universal in future, so that's to say that in principle they are universalizable. But there are also rights that may never become universal. That's to say they may exist in some societies but be absent in others. And also there were times where there were no human rights at all, though there were already humans on Earth. And neither are human rights natural, or rather they are as natural as human wrongs. Human wrongs may, historically speaking, even more natural than human rights. For example, xenophobia has existed in most societies for a long time. Or rather, in human beings in different degrees, of course, there is something angelic and devilish. So both human rights is expressing the good that exists in humans, and human wrongs reflecting the evil existing in the world and in us too, are both equally human, though not necessarily humane. Human rights are social constructs that are called to respond to human needs and remedy human wrongs. And Harvard legal theorist Alan Dershowitz has been right in the title of his 2009, I believe, book. The title was Rights from Wrongs. Exactly, rights are needed because there are wrongs. If there weren't wrongs, rights are not needed either. Why should? If everything is okay, nothing, we are all happy, why we need human rights if there are no human wrongs? Sometimes some human rights may become even natural, in the sense that some societies may start to consider them as such. They cannot imagine, I mean, the people cannot imagine how they could have lived without them before. Say, certain welfare rights in European welfare states, or how they could live in future without them. Though it may be true that due to various factors, first of all globalization, it may be that some of these welfare rights become extinct in future. However, even if natural, they are not natural because they are either God-given or stem from something that can be considered as human nature, or from the false veil of ignorance. Had human rights been natural, it would not have been necessary to constantly struggle for their observance. The compliance with them would have come naturally, automatically, and even almost effortlessly. Rare breaches would have been aberration of some deranged psychopath, whose deeds would not be considered as crimes, but as a medical issue. And instead of international criminal tribunals, for example, in The Hague, we would need medical teams to help these poor, deranged, rare people to bring them back to society. Now, universalists, that is, proponents of a universal history for the whole humankind, be they Marxists or liberal Democrats, tend to underestimate the differences acquired during the journey of Homo sapiens out of an African village. At the same time, strong cultural relativists, of course, in emphasizing only differences, fail to appreciate the universalities that have existed in all or most human communities, and which in globalizing world have a tendency to grow in importance. However, though as physical, physiological and psychological beings, all the humans are very much the same, there are huge cultural differences in the world. And Michael Walzer once aptly put it, every human society is universal because it is human, particular because it is a society. This is an important observation that draws our attention to the fact that among current wide range of human rights, there are those that reflect more characteristics of humans as physical, psychological, physiological beings, and those that reflect more their social status, characterize them as social beings. If the first category of rights is more easily universalizable, the second one is much more difficult to universalize. American social scientist Jonathan Haidt, and I recommend everybody to read if you haven't read is a very interesting book, The Writer's Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. He demonstrates in his book that there coexist today I am emphasizing, three categories of societies, not historically, but today, in today's world. Three categories: those with the ethics of autonomy, those with the ethics of community, and those with the ethics of divinity. If in the first category the individual runs prime with her wants, needs, and preferences, in the second, concepts such as duty, hierarchy, respect, reputation, patriotism prevail, while in the third prevails the idea that people are, first and foremost, only temporary vessels within which a divine soul has been implanted. If concrete individuals of different societies are able to cross the boundaries of their ethical communities, to step outside of their moral matrix, so to say, or be sometimes even able to straddle and enjoy more than one of those. Communities themselves change much more slowly, and changing that are instigated and pressed either from above or from outside may have lasting negative effect. Jonathan Haidt himself concludes his essay with a warning against moral monists. Beware of anyone, I am quoting, who insists that there is one true morality for all people, times and places, particularly if that morality is founded upon a single moral foundation. And I would like to try to make humans more similar using inter alia human rights discourse and exploitation of democracy, and we will end not with spread of human rights or democracy, but with chaos and destruction in many places. Now about contemporary challenges. There are many of them, of course, but there is something that crosses state boundaries and engulfs whole regions, even most prosperous of them. And in my opinion, there are revolutionary situations in the world, namely situations, not one situation, but in plural. First of all, such a situation exists in most Western countries that have been in the forefront of the human rights movements. Secondly, there is a revolutionary situation in the world, since the balance of power has been and is changing more rapidly than at any time in history. And revolutionary situations are bad for all normative systems, including law and morality, and therefore, first of all, for human rights law. The matter is that every legal system, every normative system, functions well, almost as if by definition, only in situations that could be called normal. In the revolutionary periods in society, be it in France, in the 18th century, in Russia, the beginning of the 19th century, normalcy was an exception and expediency ruled. Law has a tendency in such cases to break down. The same happens in international society. Starting from about the end of the 1980s, the world has entered into a revolutionary situation that started with the collapse of the bipolar world, and then went via a unipolar moment of the 1990s, and now is moving towards a multipolarity. And until the revolutionary dust settles down, one way or other, in my opinion, and normalcy emerges, it is difficult to expect that international law, including international human rights law, would function normally. And as I said, there is also a revolutionary situation in many liberal democracies, and in my opinion, is a crisis of liberal democracy. We see it in the United States, we see it in many European countries today. And the problem is that liberal democracy has in itself a dialectical controversy between liberalism on the one hand and democracy on the other. And it has been like a ticking bomb waiting to explode. Traditionally, Western societies have managed to balance these two phenomena, democracy and liberalism. Though sometimes more democracy means less liberties, more liberties, especially economic liberties, means less democracy, and so on. But this balancing has been always here. For sometimes, let's say in Scandinavia, democracy has prevailed over liberties sometimes, or in the US, liberties over democracy, and so on. However, already for decades, due first to the rapid globalization of the world and later also the changing balance of power, this controversial friend-enemy relationship between democracy and liberalism has become less friendly and more inimical. It is reflected in the fact that liberal elites in most Western countries have started labeling those Democrats whose policies and ideas or personalities they don't like as populist. But let us recall that Ralph Tarendorf once noted that one man's populism is another's democracy and vice versa. At the same time, Democrats, or populists, if you like, have considered liberals to be arrogant elitists who have become alienated from the people, from their needs and ways of thinking, believing them to be losers or ill-informed. Let's remember Hillary Clinton's comment about Trump's supporters. It was retracted later, but of course hypocritically, because this is what all the liberals practically think about Trump supporters, and we have heard yesterday these smirks here about Trump, so trumping human rights, for example. But the thing is much more serious, in my opinion, than making jokes about trumping human rights today. And of course there is quite a lot of truth in both of these allegations. I mean liberals about populist and populist again about liberals. In a way, and simplifying a bit, both Brexit and Trump's victory have been triumph of populism over elitism, or if you like, democracy over liberalism. And isn't the democratic politician almost by definition also a populist? We see it in this country, practically in all countries. So you can't be elected if you are not populist. And it's interestingly that French political philosopher, I would say, or international relations specialist, Dominique Moissy, correctly, in my opinion, singled out one of the most serious deficiencies of contemporary liberal democracy. And he wrote, the characteristics that are necessary to become elected are not the same that are necessary to get things done. And this is exactly so. And therefore, for example, in Europe, we have not politicians in power, but managers. So who can manage things if things go well? But if things don't go well, and you need visionaries, this system doesn't create visionaries. Or they are, but they are not in politics, of course. They are in business, maybe in other fields. Even the idea of the universality of human rights, notwithstanding the good intentions of most of its advocates, and regardless of positive results also, these ideas are produced, there is a dark side also. Whether done purposefully to destroy societies that don't conform, or in the sincere belief that what is good and true for us, George W. Bush, and my friend Massimo Latorre says the same thing, though they are not similar, of course. What was true for the founding fathers of the US is true for everybody, wherever it is. So this is, in my opinion, a terrible idea. Therefore, I would say that I would welcome the statement, at least one of them, of the current British Prime Minister Theresa May during his recent visit to the US, when she said, "There is no return to the failed policies of the past. The days when Britain and America intervened in sovereign countries in an attempt to remake the world our own image, in our own image, are over." Yeah, I believe it's a very good statement. So, notwithstanding whether you like or not, because of policies elsewhere. And I would like not only military interventions have all been failures, but intervening in domestic affairs of other countries by means of economic sanctions or political pressure, if not authorized, let's say by the Security Council, have more often than not made things worse than better. Therefore, the former French foreign minister and former ministers become clever very often when they are in the post. Somehow they don't behave like that. Hubert Vedrin wrote recently at the end of the last year, emphasizing that democracy and human rights will progress in future much less through the prescriptions and interference from the outside by the West than depending on the internal dynamics of individual societies. And I believe this is the future of human rights. It means also probably some regionalization of human rights and less place for this the discussion of universality of all rights. And it is often, even I would say so, in practical politics, that sometimes the less one criticizes publicly human rights somewhere, it would be better, the better it would be for human rights. Now shortly about some concrete challenges to human rights in Europe or all over the, at least Western world. I am not saying here that human rights are better in the rest of the world, no, but this has been traditionally for quite long so. There is little doubt that significant migration into the West will be a continuing long-term phenomenon, even if abating in comparison with the 2015 peak. This will bring about increasing nationalistic sentiments, identity problems, even greater difficulties of integration or assimilation of minorities, and also continuing terrorist threats. Even if ISIS would be destroyed in the Middle East, it is already moving into Europe. It is clear, and if somebody wants to read documents, I have in my computer Islamic Manifest, which expressly states that if a state, European, let's say, states fail to take measures to protect the population from terrorist attacks, it may, among other things, the states be in violation of the right of life by omission. However, more often than not, even necessary measures may encroach upon some human rights like the freedom of movement, even the prohibition of discrimination, and so on. The migration from Muslim, especially Arab countries, has raised the levels of anti-Semitism in many Western countries. I'm living more than 20 years in the UK. I didn't see it at all. Now it has become a problem, especially, of course, but particularly among the new migrants. While Islamophobia has become more widespread in most European countries than it has been before. And at the same time, almost anybody voicing criticism of Islam can be labeled as Islamophobe. Not only by Muslims, but also by bien-pensant liberals, leftist liberals, especially in most European countries, and in mass media as well. One thing is clear: leaving behind intellectually and politically debilitating political correctness, we, notwithstanding whether we are or consider ourselves to be populists, democrats, or elitist liberals, should address these challenges together and with an open mind. Thank you.